What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news and stuff to round up. So we're going to speak about changes coming in Season 6, of course a lot of this stuff coming alongside or just before Joker's Wild, and this includes Gambit updates, quality of life, and we'll touch on some new content for Season of the Drifter and beyond, including new exotic quests. On top of this though, we've got news from Bungie about March Update 2.2.0, the season boundary, and some stuff that you may want to know about. And then we're going to talk about some responses to recent community frustration about things like trials, as well as how Bungie are thinking about competitive content in Destiny going forward. And on top of this, we got a bunch of other news roundups and stuff to break down in this video, guys. So as always, plenty of stuff to talk about. Without further delay though, let's get right into it. So first up, before we talk about seasonal content and the DLC and all of that kind of stuff, DMG said Valor bonuses are currently active through Tuesday, so that'll be Tuesday's weekly reset, but he adds that there are currently no plans for Valor bonuses for the final Iron Banner, and of course we're getting that event this week. So if you are trying to get multiple resets inside of one season, then do bear that in mind. However, when it comes to pinnacle weapons from this season, the quests for these will persist into Season 6. So they aren't going to go away or anything like that. You'll be able to keep your progress outside of any seasonal rank resets that you'll need. So that's definitely positive news. Now though, let's get into some stuff about Season 6 and Joker's Wild. Of course, there's been a lot of speculation as to when Bungie are actually going to start revealing stuff, and in Bungie's recent Crimson Days livestream, the one that happened last week, Deej, while opening a bottle of bubbly with his eye, did confirm that the next couple of weeks will be the time that they speak about the major content stuff they're dropping for Joker's Wild. So essentially, this week, next week, and the following week should be pretty busy when it comes to the more major reveals for this content drop, and of course, we're all very curious to see what it is we're going to get for the next update. Now though, we're going to speak about some new changes we know about, but firstly, DMG did clarify that the team is currently planning an infamy boost before the end of the season. They'll keep us posted on the dates and bonus values, but for any of you who wanted to hit max rank inside of Gambit or have been asking about bonus infamy, it does look like we will get some kind of boost before the end of this season, so once again, that's going to be sometime in the next 2 weeks. But beyond that, of course, Joker's Wild will center in some significant way around the Drifter and Gambit, and that's also going to mean a bunch of changes for Gambit itself outside of the new Gambit mode. So DMG said, speaking with the team, invader spawns are a point of feedback that will be addressed in Season of the Drifter. They've been working on revamping the spawn point selection system to help prevent instant death when entering the opposing team's arena. And a few weeks back in the Crucible Radio podcast, Robbie Stevens from Bungie did say that when you invade, you're usually spawned behind cover, and that you have to move around, and you're usually oriented looking at the bank, the focal point of the map. However, Bungie are making some iterations in Season of the Drifter, and that is going to include spawning invaders away from players to give them the opportunity to react. So either way, invader spawns and spawn locations in Gambit in general are something that they're revamping in the March update. On top of this, Cosmo confirmed that the fast fill Gambit triumph is something that they're actually looking to adjust. I believe you have to collect 10 or 15 motes in 3 seconds or something like that. It's not one that I've actually completed, and I guess it's the same for a lot of other folks, and Cosmo agrees that this one is too difficult and is also going to be changed in the March update. So those are just a couple of quality of life changes for Gambit in general, but there will be a new Gambit mode, and in case you missed it, Bungie had said that we will see an evolution of Gambit that touches on a lot of different points of feedback about the current mode. It won't be a completely different experience, it'll still be the Drifter, fighting enemies, spawning primevals, but there is going to be a fundamental experiential shift within the Gambit paradigm for Season of the Drifter. And of course, that new Gambit mode is one of the things we can expect to get a full reveal of in the next couple of weeks' time. But also in that Crucible Radio podcast, Robbie Stevens did say something pretty interesting, and this was on the subject of player versus enemy versus player. He said he thinks it works really well. Destiny has these little continents like Gambit, and Gambit is going to grow bigger soon, but there are probably other PvEvP islands which have been inspired by Gambit. And this is pretty interesting because we did get that leak from Man on the 9 that one of the concepts Bungie were working on for Destiny 3 was actually having open world areas that also included player versus player and player versus enemy combat in general. So it's pretty interesting that those two things link together, and Robbie Stevens did say on the Crucible podcast that they want to expand more on player versus enemy experience going forward in the future. So that's pretty cool stuff. But back to Season of the Drifter specifically, there's a question I've actually seen quite a lot, and it would be about the Thorn and the availability for this weapon once it actually drops into the game. So a lot of folks have asked, will this be a piece of annual pass content? Now Bungie haven't made a direct clarification about this, but considering that the last word actually required the annual pass, and of course Thorn appears to be some kind of extension of that same story, and was also teased to us inside of the Last Word trailer, we pretty much have confirmation that Thorn will indeed require the annual pass. However, there will be a free exotic quest happening next season, and with other free exotic quests that we've seen in Destiny, they have had a tendency to be for returning exotics, although it would be pretty strange to get 2 returning exotics in the same season. I'd be curious to hear any speculation you guys have about what that could be, but also I've seen folks say that there are only 2 advertised exotic quests for Season of the Drifter, and the one thing I'd say on that that front is that not every exotic quest is actually put down on the roadmap. So Izanagi's Burden, for example, wasn't broken down by the roadmap and was essentially a secret, even though a lot of us knew that it was going to be a thing. So just bear in mind, what we see on the roadmap doesn't necessarily reflect all of the content that we're actually going to get. However, if you were looking for a good opportunity or a good time to actually pick up the annual pass, it is on sale right now. I know we're going on another tangent right here, but if it was something you're curious about, if you have PS Plus, you can get a pretty good discount for that right now, and I'll link a post down below that has the details for that. Essentially, you'd be paying $8 for every one of the updates that actually drop. So Black Armory would only cost $8, which if you're playing a game a fair amount, I don't think is actually that bad whatsoever. But let's get off of this tangent and back onto update 2.2.0. This is the March update coming on March 5th, which will be the official start date for Season 6. So on top of the stuff that we've listed right here, Bungie broke down a bunch of resolved issues that we'll see, and this includes a fix for the Black Armory key mold. So for any folks having issues with the exotic quest that requires that, it should actually be fixed. On top of this, they're fixing an issue where Dreaming City chests do not count towards the Black Armory key mold objective, and problems with the Obsidian Accelerator. They will also fix an issue where the Relic Rumble Triumph is not currently achievable, and after update 2.2.0, the Triumph will unlock when players complete the Nightfall Strike the Corrupted by defeating Sadia using no more than 2 relics. And that will also fix the incorrect description for that Triumph, and you'll also see some other quality of life changes that will be included in this update. Briefly, in case you missed, of course, we're going to see some balance changes for the One-Eyed Mask. Bungie are reworking the clan system. Essentially, we'll be able to earn clan XP by just playing the game with the clan, as opposed to having to complete bounties, which is definitely good. Although the bounties that do exist will get new rewards, including enhancement cores, so that's definitely positive as well. Otherwise, guys, for Season of the Drifter, that is pretty much everything that we really know about it right now, outside of other stuff that's on the roadmap we haven't spoken about. I'll keep you posted with the content news over the next couple of weeks though, as well as the quality of life and update stuff that we're going to learn about for March. Now though, let's round up some of the news bits right here. DMG tweeted, expect to see these in-game more frequently, so there'll be some new banner overlays in the game, and as we can see with this one, it breaks down next week in Destiny, the return of the Iron Banner, the curse in the Dreaming City, and of course, incoming news about Season of the Drifter. So that's a positive quality of life change. But also, Bungie have been talking about community feedback and ways that they can improve communication with the community itself. So of course, following the announcement about Trials, there's been a lot of frustration, and DMG responded to someone who was criticizing the feedback system for the game, and he says, over the last year, we've been adding more developer commentary to our communications, whether it be in TWABs, patch notes, Vidocs, or Dev Insights, and we've also been hosting community summits where we invite various members of the community, forum posters, streamers, and YouTubers who represent larger groups of players, and on top of that, we do host playtests at Bungie with various players invited to lend their feedback. He adds, I don't know if there could ever be a two-way conversation with the community, as it would be a single person speaking to a sea of community members from various backgrounds. In any case, we're always looking to improve. And further on this subject, DMG asked, when asking for increased communications, what would you like to see? So Bungie are actually taking feedback on how they could improve communication in general for the game, and I think on the whole, communication has been relatively good over the last year. Bungie have definitely implemented new ways to communicate with the community in general, but I think on the subject of something like Trials, folks definitely feel that there is a clash of opinion between the community and Bungie about how important this content actually is. And going back to that Crucible Radio podcast, there was a pretty interesting insight from Robbie Stevens about how they envision competitive content for Gambit, and this probably also speaks to a lot of the stuff in the game. And Robbie said that Trials was a really cool experience for a very small percentage of the overall player base, and a Trials-like mode was kind of the initial focus for something like Gambit. But he goes on to say, we've learned that if we focus on the fun, and having fun come first and competition come second, that's when a lot more people started to enjoy the mode, and we're kind of sticking to that for now. And that was in reference specifically to Gambit, so as they designed the Gambit mode, they actually turned the focus more to making it entertaining and fun, as opposed to competitive. And when you imagine some of the problems that Gambit does have, in a more competitive environment, you could definitely see how it could become more frustrating. And that possibly speaks to how Bungie have approached competitive content in general. But I'd be curious, guys, how do you think Bungie could communicate better? How do you think they could iterate on the game better than what they're doing right now? On top of this, if you do want to give some direct feedback to Bungie, then I'll link some of these forum threads and Twitter posts down below. Of course, depending on how folks feel about Joker's Wild, once we see that content, the general tone in the community could shift a little bit, but we'll have to see how that pans out over the next week or so. And one very brief update if you've been experiencing any issues with this. Folks were complaining about Solicitation on the Fireteam app and the Bungie forums in general. Essentially, there were a lot of complaints about boosting services or paid carry services actually being advertised inside of Bungie forums and comment sections and stuff like that. And Kronos, one of the developers for Bungie.net, said specifically, in the next update to Bungie.net, we'll add reporting to the website. This will also be added to a future app release for the Destiny Companion app, and they're also working on ways to auto-detect solicitation posts or anything that is trying to sell a service to players. And I think definitely when it comes to the official channels, this is stuff that shouldn't be present. While some folks may use those services, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, it is in itself a little bit anti-community, isn't it? So that's something that Bungie want to crack down on, and I absolutely agree with that. I actually got an email recently, to be completely transparent with you guys, from a boosting service that also features Destiny, asking if I would advertise it on this channel. And it's safe to say, definitely, it's not something that I would be doing here. So it's something that Bungie are looking to improve. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it down below. But for now, guys, that is going to summarize the video. So let me know what you'd love to see in Joker's Wild or Season 6, any of those quality of life changes that we know about that'll affect you, or your general feels for what we're going to get in Joker's Wild. Once again, I'll keep you posted over the next week. But as always, I'd also love to see your feedback on community frustration, how Bungie could handle things better, or your general feelings about the game right now. But guys, if you have enjoyed this update, a like below is very much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe if you want to keep up to date with Destiny 2. But for now, whatever you guys get up to, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome day.